Welcome, school administrators. We're jumping in this wonderful recap to share just a little bit about what was talked about during our AMA Mastermind. And the reason that we are creating these is because we know that administrators and school leaders have such a busy schedule and you get pulled away constantly from various meetings. And so that even happened today. A couple of folks had to pop out and pop back in. So Katie and I wanted to jump in and just share a little bit about what was discussed today. We started a brand new topic for the month of August, which is maintaining our momentum. And it was such a wonderful conversation. It was a lot of initiatives, a lot of resources shared today. And so, yeah, I'm pretty excited, Katie, to jump in and talk through, what was discussed. And the
Mhm.
conversation really began with what new school initiatives are being implemented this school year, big or small. And Katie, what were some of the things that were brought up during this conversation?
Well, we heard from a few administrators just talking about ways that they are trying to get their students more engaged. And so there was some resources thrown out as Define University, TCEA are great resources to kind of encourage that, kind of doing non-traditional ways of engagement. How do you start your classroom? Things like that. We also talked through some resources that the Teach Better team offers, which was really fun to kind of talk through. There's a couple schools who are working with some money, some grants to try to get us into their schools to do the grid method. So what I really liked is that the focus wasn't on, like another system or another, like, I don't know, like template. It was more like, how do we get our students engaged and how do we kind of embrace maybe some of the distractedness? And so I really just liked that it was more like a positive spin on some of those initiatives.
Yeah, the conversation shifted from, what's going on in the new school year to some examples of success. So a lot of
Yes.
folks had implemented some things and were sharing, how they created momentum with the initiative, which is hard because it's easy to start off strong, but to maintain it through the
Yeah.
year. So what are some things that were discussed this morning in regards to contributing to sustained success?
Well, we kind of started this conversation last week of, first like identifying what are the initiatives and then how are we communicating that to our staff. But then you're right, Josh. Once you get into August and the buildings get full, the campuses get full, email and inboxes get full, like all of that seems to like kind of go to the back of our mind. And so one thing that I loved is that someone was like, "What did we do when we were in the classroom with our students? How did we monitor our student progress?
Yep.
How can we use some of those exact same practices just with what we're doing in some of our initiatives?" But then also, are there committees or are there staff members that we are working closely with that can help us? Because I think it's really like, as a teacher, it was really stressful to think, how am I monitoring a student progress for this whole year, and like checking in with them and, oh, this kid totally fell through the cracks because I didn't have, I didn't think about it. So taking some of that pressure off of yourself as an administrator and creating that team of educators and team, whether it's people in the office, it's teachers, it's counselors, whoever, so that everyone is progress monitoring the success of your initiatives, but then also bringing it up often at meetings. We can wait until those quarterly meetings or semester, but is there a way that you can embed some like kind of things monthly or daily just to kind of internally reflect, okay, where are we at? Have we checked in? Have I checked in with my team to see how our goals and initiatives are rolling out? But just any way that you can stay on the forefront of your mind, especially when things get so crazy and like it just does. Like it's crazy and busy.
Yeah, another thing that was discussed was just the idea of trying to remove distractions within the classroom. And so there were a
Yes.
lot of things as far as policies and, you know, things that were implemented to remove distractions. Technology came up quite a bit
Yeah.
with that with students. But I thought there was a great point that was made that, students are going to find any way possible to be distracted. It's really about the teaching strategies that are implemented in the classroom that are important, and some research. There were a lot of resources that were provided this
Yeah.
morning in regards to what could be done to kind of help teachers, not just kind of fall into the same traditional practices that, so many times go into students finding ways to disengage. And
Yeah.
so what were some of the highlights for you, with that conversation?
Well, yeah, like you said, there were a few administrators who said they're really working hard on like removing cell phones from the classroom, hallways, kind of the whole like cell phone technology piece. But what I thought was interesting is they then also coupled it with, okay, but we're taking away something that is super important to a student. What can we do to replace that so that a student doesn't feel lost? And, I think sometimes we as adults forget that too, where we like, that's our safety. That's our, like if we leave the house without a cell phone, it's like we are lost, And so taking that away from students is you have to provide some sort of like practice. They have to learn how to communicate with their peers. They have to learn how to function without that. So I loved like listening to some of the ways that like they're doing that, or in some ways that they're starting classes, they're starting ways where students are engaged with each other, doing some more restorative circles, or just doing some like engaging things that aren't necessarily like jumping into the curriculum. So those were just some of the things that I thought like were unique, because it's easy for us to have like a new PBIS initiative or, a new behavior system, but really looking at like what's happening inside the walls of our classrooms and how are we fully investing in the students that are in there, and then helping support teachers, I think was such a great like shift in the conversation today.
Yeah, and they were talking too about, creating virtual calming rooms
Yeah.
and finding, resources like Microsoft Reflect to help students be aware of their emotions. So there was a
Hmm.
lot of wonderful, topics and
Hmm.
resources brought up that were kind of helping kind of, like you say, resolve an issue that's been created just in society. I mean,
Yeah,
adults are just as guilty of this as students. And then I think the pandemic has really kind of amplified our use of
absolutely.
technology and reliance on that. So, all right, last question here that we touched on before we ended our conversation, which was, just how to ensure school initiatives are built beyond just the initial momentum. And so, there were a couple things discussed. I know we touched on it a little bit, but
Mhm.
is there like a kind of like a ending thought to kind of end our recap today on making sure that we're building a successful initiative?
Yeah, I would say make sure they're all working together. There's some cohesion between whether it's an initiative you're rolling out from, the administrator, or the district's rolling out, or even like teachers and teams are rolling out, whatever it is, whether you have to like lay it out on paper and create kind of a map, but like figure out how are they all connected so that they can work together and continue that momentum. Because if they're all disconnected, teachers are going to go all over the place and something is going to get dropped or forgotten. So I would say as we're kind of like transitioning into this theme, which I'm excited to hear more about, I would like just kind of constantly be thinking about like how this thing, whatever it is that we're doing, is it connected to the other things that we already have, and making sure there's that cohesion.
Yeah, I think that was wonderfully stated. And several folks had talked about, making sure that it's intertwined in everything that we do, and it
Yep,
needs to be
absolutely.
visible. And I think that communication piece, like you said, is huge. So we're super excited to continue the conversation on maintaining our momentum in the month of August. Obviously, if you're watching this and you're not a part of that Tuesday morning conversation, go to teachbetter.com/mastermind, sign up. It is 100% free, and you'll get so many wonderful resources. I also love the fact that we brainstorm every week. So if someone brings something to the table, you've got a team of administrators and district leaders that are helping you through that. So, Katie, thank you so much for joining me for this week's Administrative Mastermind recap. And I'm looking forward to seeing everyone next week.
Bye, guys.